Hello, and welcome to another episode of Smeco Connects. My name is Sonja Cox, and I'm your host, and I'm joined by Tom Dennison.
I'm your co-host,
You're
right?
my co-host.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back on the podcast today. And Sonja, our topic today, I think we're going to talk about rate making here at Smeco. What some of the items that our members see on their bills, and kind of what goes into those charges and why they're there, and kind of how they're derived. So I think in our business, so much of what we do is trying to educate our membership about what we do here at Smeco and how we provide safe, affordable, reliable electricity. And we're fortunate enough to have two people here, Sonja, who are experts in the rate field, and you've worked with for a number of years, right?
Yes. Since the beginning of my time here.
Right. So before we move on, why don't Eugene and Tami just introduce yourselves? How long have you been here? Tell us what your title is and kind of what you do.
Sure. It is good to be here. I'm Eugene Bradford. Smeco's Vice President for Rates and Energy Procurement. I've been at Smeco for over 29 years. It's been just a privilege to be here and work at a cooperative providing electric service to our members.
You're before you came here, you were from Texas, correct?
I am originally from Texas, and I very much enjoy being from Texas. It was a great place to be, but I found Maryland has been an excellent place to be as well. It's a beautiful part of the country, and I like it very much up here. My family's grown up here, and we're happy to be from Maryland now.
Well, we're glad to have you. How about it, Sonja?
Yes.
So Tami, how about you?
I'm Tami Fellner. I've been here for 10 years this April. My title is Energy Accounting and Credit Manager. When I first started here at Smeco, I was in the accounting department, and I've been in the rates department with Eugene for almost 5 years now.
Excellent. And where did you work before Smeco?
Before Smeco, I worked for Cheney Enterprises. I was the accounting manager, so we handled concrete, ready-mix concrete, sand and gravel aggregates, very local Southern Maryland. I've been in Southern Maryland my entire life. I grew up in Charles County. I now live in St. Mary's County. My kids have gone to school in St. Mary's County. So I'm not only an employee of Smeco, but I'm also a member of Smeco.
Absolutely, as are all of us. So yeah, thank you for all you do. So Eugene, just break down the two components of our bill and what goes into those, and why we have our bill the way we do.
Sure. So your electric bill has a power supply component, and it also has a distribution component. The power supply is the charge for the energy that is actually flowing through your house and running all of your appliances and entertainment equipment and other electronic equipment there. It's literally the electrons flowing through your house. So there's a cost for that commodity, is what we often call it, and that is what is recovered through the power supply part of your bill. And there's a lot of pieces to it. There are a lot of components, and it changes a lot as it goes along. But that's that part of it. The other part is the distribution portion of your bill. That basically is the cost for the plant and items that connect your house to the electric grid, the wires and transformers and utility poles and substations, all of that physical plant that is out there around our service territory that gets the commodity, the electrons from where they're generated, generating plants around all of Southern Maryland and then basically into your house. So those are the two main parts of what your electric bill is composed of, and those are what we work on coming up with the rates to recover the cost that we incur for doing those two parts of providing electric service to customers.
Excellent.
So Tami, you want to talk about the commodity portion of the bill and what's all involved in that?
So every month we calculate a power cost adjustment, is sometimes referred to as a PPCA or the PSA rate. And what that is made up of is it's 100% pass through of our purchase power cost.
And by that, you mean what we pay for it is what the customer pays.
Correct.
Okay.
So every month I prepare what our total costs are. Our costs consist of power and gas hedges we've put in place. They consist of our PJM costs. We're a member of the PJM market. So there's certain costs associated with that get passed through to SMECO. That include capacity cost, congestion, transmission demand. There's a number of things. And the PJM monthly bill runs anywhere from 18 million to 92 million that we saw in January. So a lot of it is impacted by weather, and the weather then can cause demand. And what we're seeing is with the influx of data centers and large load, it's causing the demand right now to be greater than the supply. Over the past few years, we've seen the increased electricity usage, increased customers. We've seen the retirement of certain plants.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's been a big part of it.
New generation hasn't been brought on as quickly as we would like. So unfortunately, we're seeing the impact of all of that in these costs that are being passed through to us. We also have a portion of our purchase power cost that is related to renewable energy credits. So the state has regulated by 2030 that 50% of our load has to be covered by renewable energy credits. This is where we're talking about wind, solar, geothermal, those type of things. So this past year, 9% of our purchase power cost was related just to purchasing renewable energy credits to satisfy this regulatory requirement from the state of Maryland. So every month I take and put all of that together to calculate what our true costs have been.
Yeah, and I think that's important for our viewers to understand that so many of these costs are really out of our control. And when people have read over the past several months, actually probably closer to the last year, power costs have gone steadily up. And what some of those things you talked about, the capacity and the congestion charges, Maryland imports more than 40% of our electricity into the state, right? And so those congestion and capacity costs are a result of that power needing to come into Maryland. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
And so when you have this increased demand, and we talked about retirements of existing plants or the inefficiencies of these plants without being properly replaced with baseload generation, that's what creates that sort of difficult supply and demand curve that causes prices to go up.
That's correct.
So when you mention baseload, Tom, can you tell our viewers and listeners what you mean by that?
Sure. Baseload is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These are your typically fossil fuel plants or your nuclear plants. The wind, solar, renewable are more intermittent, and they're not what we call those base load power that's always there and always available.
So, Tami, one more thing that I wanted to ask you about was you mentioned our PJM invoice for January was $92 million, but our total power costs for January were only $76 million. And can you talk about that a little bit, what we do to try to keep our costs down?
So SMECO has a hedge policy in place, and we go out and we work with a partner
ACES Power
Marketing to find some the best deals that fit our portfolio. And we have hedges in place currently that go out through 2032. They include financial and power. They include blocks of energy. They include capacity. So what we're doing is we're trying to layer and put in place hedges to help offset what we predict the future costs were going to be.
Sure.
So by doing that in January, we saved ourselves over $20 million by having the hedges in place that we did.
Yeah, and I think that's what's unique about Smeco's power purchasing model, right? We have a managed portfolio where we can take advantage of short, medium, longer term contracts that benefit us and sort of give us a little bit of insulation from the, wicked spikes that you could see in the market, right? So Eugene, just kind of brings me to you've been here over 30 years. Have you seen almost 30 years? I'm sorry. I didn't want.
Don't make me too old yet.
I didn't want to. I'm sorry about that. But in your time here, have you seen power costs kind of do what they're doing today versus maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago?
We have seen power costs do what they're doing today previously, and in fact, our power supply costs were higher than they are today back in the 2008 to 2010 timeframe.
People
when
forget
the
that.
financial crisis occurred back then, and basically natural gas prices went very high, and that drove the cost of power supply very high as well. And so it came down steadily after that point in time through about 2 or 3 years ago, 2018 or so, 2021, 2022, before the challenges that we've been talking about here have caused the power supply costs to go back up. And back at that point in time as well, we were doing the power supply hedging that Tami was mentioning to buy blocks of power supply at prices that basically help to offset the daily instantaneous fluctuations in prices that go up so much and can cause even higher power supply costs. So we've been doing this managed portfolio of hedging our power supply purchases since 2005, and it has helped to keep our power supply cost fairly stable, of avoiding them going up and down very rapidly and causing lots of difficult high bills for customers. I know they do still go up, and it is a challenge, especially when customers use more energy in the winter and in the summer months for heating and for cooling, and that does cause the bill to get higher. But at least the rates stay a bit more stable through all those periods and avoids even higher amounts of charges on the bill for power supply.
So Tami, back to you, you talked about all the things that go into what you use every month to calculate what our power costs are. So there's two components to the commodity rate on our bill. Can you talk about that a little bit and how we recover those costs?
So we have the standard offer service rate that is in effect, and that's pretty much a stable rate that we've been approved by the Public Service Commission, and it fluctuates some for winter months versus summer months. And the PCA rate has a built-in mechanism where if our rate for residential customers goes 5% over or 5% under the difference with that standard offer service rate, that it triggers an SOS restatement. So we go back and we calculate what our current costs are going to be for our purchase power going forward. And we go to the Public Service Commission and we file an SOS restatement. And sometimes it increases the SOS rate, sometimes it decreases the SOS rate.
Yeah, and I think it's a very transparent process that we have, and I think that's one of the hallmarks, I think, of Smeco is that there's no hidden agenda here. We're not for profit. What we pay for power is what we charge, and the PCA, the power cost adjustment. I know we communicate that on a monthly basis to our members through our co-op review, and it shows in a pretty good bar graph just kind of where power costs are going, and it kind of helps people get a forecast, get an understanding when power costs have been going up steadily. it's likely that Smeco is going to have to go in for an SOS restatement. So again, it's not popular. It's not a easy concept necessarily, but we're trying to do our best to at least explain what goes into these types of things.
One other thing I want to mention, the power cost adjustment rate that's calculated monthly is submitted to the Public Service Commission, and they audit and recalculate it based on their formulas, and then we get approval from them to charge our rates. So they're reviewing these rates that are calculated every month. And then we have an annual audit as well, where they go into much more detail with the audit. And we just had that, and everything was agreed upon by Public Service Commission, Office of People's Counsel, and we were found to be in compliance and doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
That's great.
And not only are we audited monthly and annually by the Public Service Commission, but we also are audited by our outside auditors. And when they come in, they take a sample of our bills. Like I don't know how many they're using, what their sample size is, and they recalculate every item on the bill to make sure that it's calculated correctly. And they also send letters out to those people that they've chosen and ask them if this amount agrees with what they are seeing on their bill. So we are audited. I hear that a lot, that, you know, Smeco, you need to be audited. But we are audited, and not only by the Public Service Commission, but by our outside audit firm.
And we're audited monthly on our invoices. I send sample invoices for all of our rate classes to the Public Service Commission to show that our bills, we're billing with the rate that they approved for us. So they're seeing that on a monthly basis as well.
So there's oversight is what we're trying to say.
Correct.
Which is great. And just to kind of get closer towards the end here, Eugene, you had mentioned the two parts of the bill. We talked about the commodity. Tami explained really well about the PCA, the distribution component of the bill you had mentioned. That's what covers all the costs for operations of the co-op. And there's a number of line items in the distribution component of the bill. There's everything from EUSP charge, which helps low-income folks, to Empower Maryland, which is a charge that all of us pay for, that funds a state of Maryland required program that helps people save money on their electric bill through energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction measures. And there's also a line item called a bill stabilization adjustment on the distribution component of the bill. Can you explain that?
So the distribution costs are determined for how much we need to recover on an annual basis for providing that distribution service, how much the cost is to Smeco that we need to recover through our electric bills to customers. So the rates that are set for our distribution costs are mainly for most customers, residential and commercial as well, are basically a kilowatt hour based rate, a per kilowatt hour charge. There's a small fixed monthly facilities charge as well.
So it's a rate times how much you use.
Use to come up with what your electric bill is. So that basically applies on a monthly basis for recovery of distribution costs, but it varies from month to month as usage goes up and down.
And what are those types of costs that we're trying to recover through the distribution rate?
We're trying to recover the cost of the capital costs, which are the cost of poles and wires and transformers, the physical parts of the system that are out there connecting the customer to the electric grid. We're also recovering basically our administrative costs as a co-op for operating, our salaries for all of our employees, our costs of our operating facilities, trucks and computer systems that we have for running the business, for basically doing customer service, when customer service representatives, when people call in, the cost for all those employees are all part of our administrative, our operations and maintenance costs, all our costs for our line crews going out there and keeping the lines up and operating and putting new lines up as needed. All of those costs are part of our distribution costs. So, and again, that we have a annual amount that we have for that service that we are trying to recover, and as the monthly bill that a customer pays goes up and down because of variations in the usage, the amount that we're recovering relative to how much we should be recovering that month can vary. And therefore, we have this bill stabilization adjustment factor that is used to basically adjust the amount that's recovered from customers on a month-to-month basis to get it back to being closer or more in line with what's the monthly amount that's needed for meeting recovering all of our distribution costs. So on a month-to-month basis, that factor is calculated and put onto the bills, a bill stabilization adjustment, to make the total monthly bill for distribution from each customer more stable and in line with what's the amount that is authorized for SMECO to recover for recovering our distribution costs.
And can that number, that bill stabilization adjustment, can that be positive and or negative?
Yes, that factor is. You will see if you go and look at your bill for a period of time, you will see the factor positive or negative to adjust the amount that the customer is paying. In fact, I believe, Tami, correct me if I'm wrong, the current residential bill for April is a credit for the bill stabilization adjustment.
So all we're trying to do is recover what we're authorized to recover. So if we recover more than we are authorized to in 1 month, then we're going to put a credit on the bill in 2 months later.
That's correct.
And
That's
the same
correct.
goes with the PCA, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So I tell you, Sonja, this has been a good podcast, in my opinion. I mean, so much scrutiny goes into our bills, right? I mean, and I think we have a lot of people who wonder what some of these items are. And I think it's important to note that a lot of those explanations are on our website. If you go on to smeco.coop, you can click on your bill and there's an explanation of every line item, every inch of the bill, if you will, of what it is, why it's there, and encourage people to do that. But there's nothing that substitutes for actual people trying to explain it, in my opinion. Right. So I think that's what's really nice about this podcast and allowing sort of that window into the workings here at SMECO. So just from my standpoint, Tami and Eugene, thank you for all you do. Lord knows I'm always calling and asking questions about things that I get about from legislators or members of the public. So I thank you for everything you do. So
yes, I agree. Echo what Tom said.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome.
Appreciate trying to be here and give some explanation.
Awesome. Good. Thank you for your
Thanks.
time.